Yeah, so let's just go ahead and do we're going to do a review in algebra, but before that, let's talk about negative and positive integers, right? Let's think about, let's first think about, in a number line, we have, 2, 3, 4, etc. And we have our negatives on this side. So as we go to the right, what is happening to our numbers?
They're going up.
Right, they're going up. In other words, they're getting larger. Okay? So then what does that mean for when we go to the left?
They're getting smaller.
They get smaller.
So we're getting smaller. And sometimes that can be a little confusing because if we look at, let's say, for example, obviously if we compare 2 and 7, right, which number is bigger?
I thought you were done with your work.
So
7?
we compare, yeah, right. If we compare 2 and 7, that means 7 is bigger, just as 0 and 6, right? We compare those two, our 6 would be bigger. But then, like, if we see something like -4 and 1, which one of those numbers is bigger?
1.
So, right, I mean, technically, even though 4 has a larger value than 1, because of the negative, 1 is a larger number than -4, right? So that's where I guess sometimes the confusion can kind of come in. Okay, so if we keep thinking about numbers in the number line, right? Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, got -1, -2, -3. Let's just say we're gonna do some operations with those numbers, right? And actually, let me change the number line. Let's say we have -8 plus 4. Let's just go ahead and I'm going to do it on the number line here. Number -7, -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, so on, right? So -8 plus 4. What that means is that we're going to start off at -8, right? And so if we're adding 4, what does that mean? Do we go towards the right or to the left?
To the right.
The right, exactly.
Right.
So that means -8, and we're going to add 4. So in our final answer means that we're going to have -4.
-4.
Yes. So, sometimes it depends on how you look at it, right? But for the most part, let's say -8 plus 4, right? Or sorry, -7 plus 6 as an example, right? So I guess another way to look at it is saying, when we have two different symbols, what do we have to do? Do we have to add them or do we have to subtract them? So we have a negative and a positive. Do we add them or do we subtract them?
Subtract.
We have, right, we're going to subtract them, right? So -7 plus 6, that means we're going to subtract them, right? So that the difference between those is 1. Now, how do we decide which one we're going to keep? Which, are we going to make it not negative or positive?
Your number?
Negative, right?
Negative and a positive is a negative.
Well, that only works with multiplying and dividing, right? So we'll go into that right now in a little bit.
Bigger number?
Exactly. So we decide which one is negative or positive depending on the bigger number. So let's say I had the same problem, but this time it was -6 plus 7. In this case, the answer is still 1, but let's decide, is it going to be a positive or is it a negative?
Wouldn't it
Positive.
be negative?
Well, no, -6 plus 7, or now in this case, a 7, which is positive, is a bigger number, so it would actually be a positive. Do we see the difference between those two?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rodriguez,
What's up?
sorry I'm late.
No, it's all right. Don't worry.
Alright,
At least you're here. All right.
alright.
But let's look at another example. Let's say we have -4 plus 10. Okay. I think what throws people off is the way that it's written, right? So -4 plus 10. What is another way that we can write this?
10
minus 4.
Exactly, 10 minus 4. You see, all we're doing is switching the numbers around. 10 minus 4. Did we change the problem at all?
No.
No. So when I see -4 plus 10, I think that freaks some people out, right? But if I see 10 minus 4, what's that answer?
6.
Exactly. So for me, it's always been easier to look at it this way, right? So if you're confused, that's one way. Like, let's do another example and say we have -9 plus 4. Again, I look at it and it's a little confusing, but if I rewrite it, how would I put this?
4 minus -9.
Or not minus -9, but just -9.
Oh, shoot. It's a whole plus right there.
So here's the thing. There's a difference with that. We're not saying 4 minus -9. That means we're adding an extra negative in there, right? We're actually, with this would have to be the same as saying 4 plus -9. Okay? You see the difference there?
Yes.
So
Yes.
those will be two completely different answers, okay? So 4 minus 9, now that's a little bit easier, right? If we subtract that, what would that be?
5.
It would be 5. And how do we decide whether it's negative or positive?
It's positive because it goes to the right all the way.
Well, we actually have to look at the bigger number. What's the bigger number?
9. -9.
Exactly. So it actually be. Here, let me see. Let me do it in a different way, okay?
Oh my god.
Okay, so we have 4 minus 9, right? If we start out at 4 and we're subtracting, which way would we be going?
To the left.
Exactly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we end up at -5.
-5.
Okay. So it really depends on how you look at it, but in terms of a number line, that's the way it works. Okay. So let's try this. Let's try a different one, and again, we'll write up the number line. So I just kind of explained this a little bit, but if we have 7 plus -3, what is another way that we can write that?
-3 plus 7.
So yeah, -3 plus 7, that's one way, sure. But what's another way?
7 minus
3
3.
minus -7.
7 minus 3. You see? So all of these mean the exact same thing. But in all honesty, the one that probably works out the best for me is that 7 minus 3, right? So 7 minus 3 is much simpler, right? Because then what would that be?
Huh?
4.
4. And let's just look at it in the number line again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we start off at 7. And if we subtract 3, we're going to go which way?
To the left.
So 1, 2, 3. We end up at 4. Okay. So it's just much better to visualize it as, let's see. Yeah, it's much better to visualize it with a number line. So let me throw another example. Say we have -2 plus -7. So what's another way that we can write that problem down there?
-7 minus 2.
-7 minus 2, yeah, that's one way. We could also write it as -2 minus 7 or -7 plus -2. These are all the same, right? I just want you guys to be aware because there's going to be, you know, sometimes we'll see it as in a bunch of different ways, and we need to make sure that we have the correct one. But it works the exact same way, except this time they're the same sign, okay? So let's look at it on the number line. We have, let's say we have -6, -7, -8, -9, -10, so on, -11, okay? So -7, we're gonna start off at -7. We're subtracting 2, which way are we going to go?
To the left.
To the left again. So 1, 2. Our answer then would be what? -9. Okay. So we're gonna
Yeah.
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It just keeps cutting in and out, but okay. So, you know, we have different rules when we have multiplying and dividing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the way I always see it, right? So when we're multiplying or dividing two positives, what should the answer be?
Positive.
Positive, exactly. So two positives is going to give us a positive.
Positive.
What about a positive and a negative?
Negative.
A
Negative.
positive.
Negative.
What about a negative and a positive?
Negative.
Negative as well.
Negative.
Now, if they're both negative, what
It makes
happens?
a
then?
Positive.
That's a
Positive.
positive. So that's kind of the way I remember it, obviously, but like in another way is just if they're both the same sign, then it should be a positive. If they're different signs, then we have a negative, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if we were to say, I don't know, like, say we have -3 times 5, we'll have 4 times 10, maybe 3 times -4, and then let's just say -6 times -5. Okay. So these are all different examples, right? We have -3 times 5. What would that be?
-15.
-15, right? What about the next one? We have two positives, 4 times 10.
It would
40.
be 40.
And it would be a positive 40, right?
Okay.
Then we have 3 times negative 4.
Negative 12.
Negative 1.
Well,
Negative 12. And finally, negative 6 times negative 5.
positive 30.
A positive.
Yeah. Eric, you cut out right there.
My Wi-Fi sucks right now.
Well, I can't hear you.
Gordo, shut up.
Whoa.
All right, guys. I think, okay, so I think we're good with that. You know, there's just a couple of the key things for you guys to remember. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When, let's say we have this example. Let's say we have negative 23 minus negative 17. Okay. I know that someone said that earlier, how it's like a minus negative 17 or something like that. What happens
Wouldn't
when
it be a
we have-
positive?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, then, yeah,
So-
you'd add, right? You add.
Right. What happens here is that we have two negatives separated by a parentheses. So that turns into an addition problem. So negative 23 plus 17. So what would be the answer here? Negative 23 plus 17.
Negative 40? Right?
No. Remember, they're different signs, so we have to find the difference.
Wait, wouldn't it be
Oh,
negative
yeah.
40? No.
No, well,
No, it'd be
negative 6.
Negative 6, there we go. Okay, so they're different signs. We have to find the, if they're different signs, we have to find the difference. If they're the same signs, we add them together, okay? Now we decide that we keep the negative because 23 is our larger value, right? So
Yes.
negative 6 would be our answer, okay? But the key thing, right? Remember that when we have two negatives separated by a parentheses, it turns into a positive. So this turns into a addition problem.
Get your ass in there.
You're cutting out.
Okay.
Imagine. The money get old. It's going magic, nasty. With the mag.
Okay. Better or no?
Yeah, better.
Okay. Next key thing. Let's say we have a 5, right? Let's just say we have a 5. What sign do we assume that 5 is?
Positive.
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 So whenever we don't have a sign, what do we assume the number is going to be?
Positive.
Positive.
Exactly. Yeah. Just as if we add a -2, obviously that's going to be a negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's a couple key things to remember, all right? Okay, so we're almost done with that. Just give me a second here.
These toes around my jeans.
Okay.
They got me needed. You know, we be undefeated. Undefeated, say they did.
Okay. So we're gonna do a review of solving equations, okay? Because even though we're in geometry, we're gonna be doing a lot of solving of equations, and we need to make sure that we're strong with that. Okay? So for today, we're gonna focus on one-step equations, right? The one step. And literally, as the name suggests, right? There's only one step to solve these problems, right?
Right.
So let's first think about our arithmetic. So when I say arithmetic, do you guys know what I mean by that?
Eh.
no.
Not sure? So arithmetic is, it's just a branch of math, right? In other words, when we're talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, that is arithmetic. okay? So when we talk about that, if we were to add a number, so let's say we're start at 0 and then we wanted to add 3, right? We go to 3. But let's say we wanted to go back to a 0. How do we do that? So we started at 0, we added 3. How do we go back to a 0?
-3.
Exactly, we're going to subtract 3. And that puts us back at 0, okay? So what does that tell us? Adding and subtracting are opposites of each other, right? Just like multiplication and division. Let's say I multiply 2 times 3, right? That would be 6. How do I get back to 2, for example?
Divide by 3.
Exactly, 6 divided by 3. So these are opposites of each other as well. So why is this important? And let's go ahead and do an example. Let's go to our first example. X plus 3 equals 4. Right? So what we want to do, when we solve an equation, we call it working backwards. Right? So we work backwards because we're not sure what the x is, but we know that we're adding 3. So if we added 3, that means that if we subtract 3 from both sides, we'll be able to find what the answer is. Okay? So in other words, to solve this, what do we need to do to both sides?
Subtract.
I honestly don't know.
So we're going to subtract 3, right? So we subtract 3. What happens on the left side?
You do the same thing.
So on the left side, we have 3 minus 3. What happens there?
It's just X. It cancels out.
That cancels out. We have 0. So then we bring down our x. And then on the right side, we have 4 minus 3.
And then 1.
1.
1. So x is equal to 1. So you see what happened there? We were adding 3, so what we did is we subtracted to work backwards, okay? And we can obviously check it. So let's say I plug in my x, I do 1. So 1 plus 3 equals 4. Is that true?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, right? 1 plus 3 gives us 4, and 4 is equal to 4. So that's correct. And that's how we check our problem.
So you missed.
Now let's say we have x minus 5 equals 7. So how do we solve this one?
You would
Add
add
5.
5.
There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to split our equation in 2. We're going to add 5 to one side, so we have to do it to the other side.
Cancels
So
out, and
We're going
then
to
X
cancel
equals
this
12.
out. 7 plus 5,
X equals 12.
x equals 12. Exactly. So pretty simple, right? Like I said, these are called one-step equations, which literally means we only do one step to solve them. Okay, now let's look at another example. Let's say 5x equals 35. So again, I always like to draw that line because that separates my equation in 2.
The 5.
So we have 5x. What when we have a number and a variable together, what does that imply? What are we doing?
You divide 5.
Multiply.
Multiply.
So we're multiplying, when we have 5 and x, we're multiplying 5 times x, right? So if we want to do the opposite thing, we're going to divide, right?
Yes.
So we're going to divide both sides by 5.
Mhm.
And that right here cancels out. And then we have 35 divided by 5.
6.
7.
7, yeah.
Boy,
Oh shit.
that's 30. Okay.
Okay. And we can obviously check that as well. So let's say I plug in 7 for my x. So on the left side, we have 35. On the right side, we also have 35. So that's correct. Okay, last example.
Okay. Let's do this.
So x over 2, what does that imply?
Oh, damn.
You gotta time by 2, don't you, on by both sides?
Yes. So when we have x over 2, that implies that we are dividing x by 2. So if we want to do the opposite of divide, we are going to multiply both sides by 2, right?
Yes.
So that cancels out. X is equal to 8 times 2, which is
16.
16.
Trying to work around here.
So one step, right?
Yep.
And we can check that as well. If we plug in 16 where x used to be, 16 divided by 2 is 8.
8.
Okay. So do we have any problems? Any questions or any other,
No.
anything that we're still a little confused by?
No.
No.
Okay.
No bidding.
So your homework is gonna consist of practicing adding and subtracting negatives and positives, multiplying negatives and positives. You know, we need to make sure that we're really strong with those, okay?
Okay.
And
Is
we
it gonna be on
also,
Delta Math?
yes, so I think after this, I think the rest of our homework should be on Google Slides for this week, but we'll see. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, you guys have been doing a pretty good job. You know, I think you're the best class in terms of like turning in work. You guys, pretty much everyone has turned in their work. No one's missing anything. Let's see. Yeah, so your homework is gonna be on adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, positives and negatives. And finally, you're gonna practice one-step equations, okay? So just like we did, right? We need to do one step. Okay?
Okay.
Do we have any questions or concerns?
When you go post it.
No, sir.
It should already be on there, I think.
Okay.
All right. So if you want to get in there, go ahead and get started. Okay. But you know, if you guys have any problems, make sure to send me a message or something, and I'll go ahead and give you guys a.
Coronavirus.
All right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let's see. So